Hello, Stienemarié. This is the first time that you join us on the monthly recording. Welcome, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Theo. Thanks for having me.
Well, if we look at the markets, it's certainly been an interesting time. From your point of view, what stood out for you?
Yes, I agree. It has been very interesting times since COVID. I think the last couple of months, the rand has been on really strong levels. Maybe you can give us some reasons for that and the prospects going forward?
Yes, certainly. I think the rand surprised a lot of people. A number of years ago, the IMF did a very detailed study as to what was the reasons behind the volatility of the currency. And that study was done over a number of years. Remember, this was done 3-4 years ago. And they tried to ascertain which are the major factors that results in volatility, short-term volatility in the value of the rand. And their study had 4 big conclusions. And in this order, the single element that has the most impact on the volatility and the value of the rand in the short term was the level of commodity prices. We are a commodity exporting country, specifically metals and minerals. And if you look at the commodity price cycle, since the world came out of COVID, we had strong commodity prices worldwide. And we're seeing that in the results of our mining companies. That's brilliant results. It adds to economic growth, to employment, to tax revenue. But that strong commodity cycle is a strengthening factor to the rand. So given that, that puts support under the rand that we've seen. Remember, if you take a year ago around this time, the rand was weaker than 19 to the dollar. We're 25% stronger. That's the one reason. The second reason that they put is every time the world moves out of a recession situation, as we are seeing now, as we move out of the COVID depth of negative growth, you see capital flowing into emerging markets, and that usually strengthens the rand. Now, at this point in time, we're seeing that capital moving. Unfortunately, South Africa's not getting the usual share, but hopefully at some point we will get that. So that also strengthening factor to the rand. The third one is, what is a measurement of political uncertainty in South Africa? The more uncertainty there is, the weaker the rand is, or the more volatility we have in the rand. And I have to say that although there is still major interim or major internal pressure points within the governing party, we are in a better position than we were 6 or 9 months ago, or even 2 or 3 years ago. The fourth factor was internal changes in American policy, or not really policy, economic factors. That means the value of the dollar. And those are the 4 factors in that order that usually in the short term has an impact on the rand. So if you look at those 4, you can appreciate that the current strength of the rand is based on those factors coming in line. But that doesn't mean that will continue. In the long term, there is a political and an economic discount to our value of our currency. And one must also understand that. Number one. Number two, if you look at our medium-term growth forecast, there is a discount to that as to the rest of the world. And given those factors, as well as then the underlying inflation differential, that tells you that our rand over time should weaken. But Stienemarié, from point of view of our house view, our advice to clients, given where the rand is currently, what is the house view currently?
Okay, so from a planning side, we're still comfortable to take cash offshore at levels 15 rand to the dollar or better. And especially now is a good time if you need to get your offshore and local assets the correct balance. That is definitely a good time to get that in order. And then once the cash is offshore, we still like to phase it in. Some of the US markets is still parts is still expensive. And just to reduce the volatility in the beginning a bit, we like to phase in over 6 months once the cash is offshore.
So the point is we're happy to we don't phase in taking the cash offshore. That we'll do straight away if the rand is stronger than 15, which it is currently. But the phasing in on the offshore side is over a 6 months period.
Correct, exactly like that. And then Theo, on the local side, we've seen some good growth from the end of 2020, and it seems to be holding up. What's your thoughts on that?
Look, I think that we come from a very weak 2020. I mean, a year ago in this period, markets were 30-40% lower than they are now. The rand was 25% weaker than it's now. Economic forecasts were looking horrendous. So our negative growth for last year, which was expected, and then it comes in at somewhere between 7 and 8% negative, This year we'll see positive growth. The fact is that unfortunately that'll probably be around 3.6, 3.8% if we're lucky. The question is what will happen next year. But even there, we are one of the few countries that negative growth was more than 4%. So they're in a category that we negative more than 4%. And the other negative is that our positive growth for this year is less than 4%. And that you can categorize. There's countries whose drop was less than 4%, growth more than 4%. So we kind of in that realm, we're going to take a bit longer. What we, however, do see is there's the companies in South Africa is showing very strong resilience when it comes to earnings growth. Companies have taken last year as the opportunity to cut out costs, to reduce cost infrastructure, to refocus their businesses, take big write-offs, and we are starting to see those results coming through in our market. So our view in terms of the local market is, remember, the market and the economy is two different things. The market and the economy is not the same thing. But what we're seeing in the market is there's companies that are showing above average results, that are showing actually good earnings growth. So the point there is value in our market. There is cyclical value, both in terms of the commodity cycle that's turning in its favor, but there's also value purely from a valuation point of view. So having said that background, that our market actually, even at these levels, I still foresee in the next few years that we will see positive growth, unless we get another shock, which nobody can predict. And the game changer there could be is, how is COVID going to work through the system? Where is our government in terms of vaccination programs? When will we see a normalized society? The sad part is, if I look at some countries with the same demographic as us, like Brazil and India, they're struggling to get through this. And there's no reason why we shouldn't expect that this is not going to be a straight line recovery. There will be hiccups. But if those hiccups are manageable and the economy starts to pick up momentum, and there's signs that the growth in 2021 we'll see in 2022 or 23 again, that'll even put more impetus in our local market. But from a planning perspective, our house view in terms of implementation?
So on the local side, we also like to phase in, but a shorter period of time. So on the local side, a 3-month phase in should be fine.
So if you've got new money or additional capital that you need to allocate in the local market, it's not 6 months like international, it's a shorter time period. The theory behind phasing in, what is that?
It's just to reduce some of the volatility in the beginning when you add or start a new investment, just to make it a bit of a smoother ride in the returns.
Well, and we're comfortable, given the value of the South African market, that you phase in over the 3-month period.
Yes, we are happy with that, and then the longer phase in on the offshore side.
Obviously, if I look at South Africa, I think we have to realize that if you look at the political environment, the struggles within the ruling party is not close to an end. These things we will probably see the struggle going on until at least the 2022 leadership conference. And we now have a date for the municipal elections. It will be the 27th of October. I do believe that will be interesting to watch, since I think, unfortunately, in the South African case, is the opposition parties is in quite disarray, which means policy will, to a large extent, be determined by what happens within the ruling party. What will be interesting for me to watch, and hopefully we will get some exciting news, is that there might be some independence in some of the, not only the smaller municipalities, but in the big metros, where there might be some independent candidates that might see a change. And let's see how it goes. Closer to the time, we'll talk more about the elections. But Stienemarié, thank you very much. Thanks for your contribution, and I look forward to the next time you're joining me.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate it.